Today class. So I'm Dr. Vigor. So I'll be your instructor for construction management. So this is the module which we'll be using. This is the integrated construction project management and architecture um, handbook made by me. So the contents are, we have chapter 1, introduction to project management. So let's open chapter 1 for this week's lecture. So chapter 1, project management construction. So then we have an introduction to project management. So let's first look at an analysis of the construction 2025 report, challenges and creating value through the supply chain. So the Global Construction 2025 report is a detailed analysis of the overall global industry, which began in July 2013. The report forecasted that the market for construction will grow by almost 70% by 2025 from 2012, with an average annual growth rate of 4.3% yearly. So this places the value of the market at $8.7 trillion in 2012, with an estimated value to rise to $15 trillion by 2025, which equates to 12.2% of the world GDP in 2012 and 13.5% of the world GDP in 2025. So the report indicated certain factors on a micro scale which is influencing the overall development of the construction industry in a global scale. So we have the United States of America, the necessity to respond to an increase in demography. Japan, the necessity to respond to decrease in demography. So the number of Japanese citizens are declining, meaning their birth rates are getting low. You have Turkey and the sub-Saharan Africa, capacity to respond to rapid rates of urbanization. Canada, the need to upgrade the existing infrastructure. United Kingdom, the use of infrastructure as an economic growth stimulant. Then Latin America and the Middle East, the necessity for housing which is affordable and the growth of mega projects. Then you have Indonesia, China, Philippines, and Vietnam, the necessity to create new trade routes and maximizing the share of emerging markets in the global economy. So analysis, the key challenges and impact on delivery. So the challenges which are crucial to these macro factors are the following: how to properly finance these needed infrastructure projects, how to efficiently prioritize expensive or scarce resources within the supply side. So according to the Wolstenholme report in 2009, they believe that the time of change led by the client is over, and for the time being, it is now the right time for the supply side to show and demonstrate on how it can add social, economic, and environmental value by the use of innovation, integrated working, and collaboration between those involved in the supply chain side and the management section. This means that clients should shift their focus on standardizing and professionalizing their practices on procurement in order to reward suppliers who produce solutions which have value. Radical changes in the process of construction need to be implemented to attain the targets suggested in the Wolstenholme report. So, these changes are based on four interrelated elements. First is that the development of the product, which means sustained development of the product in order to be able to satisfy client and consumer needs. Next is the implementation of the project. So making the totality of the project team work as a whole with the possibility of using components, which are standardized, modeling in the computer, and pre-assembled components. Third, establishing partnership with the supply chain. The utilization of the supply chain to champion innovation, improve performance, and establishment of supplier reward systems. Then we have components production. This refers to the overall improvement of logistics and production processes in such a way that wastes are eliminated and the correct components are created and delivered at the appropriate time it is required with no defects. So these improvements in the delivery processes could only be achieved if the organizational structure and culture of construction companies are modified to support these elements throughout the life cycle of a project. Therefore, in order for delivery to be improved, the supply chain must be optimized and best practices in the procurement of processes should be identified along with the development of change management strategies which allows for better practices. It is important to note that failure to optimize supply chain practices could fragment the construction supply chain, making components more adversarial and less trusting. This could lead to an industry with a significant number of conflict points, leading to reduced efficiency and higher cost. Then, in project management last, there's an important concept called the whole project life cycle view. So, in simple terms, having a whole project life cycle view, meaning as an architect, when you look at a building or when you plan a building, you should not only look at it during the development or implementation phase, but you should also look at it from the initiation, planning, execution, and closure phases as well. Okay, so that's the meaning of it, the whole project life cycle view in construction, which is really important for us architects to understand what it is. Okay, so let me read this. So the project life cycle in construction. So the different guides and standards in the industry represent the project life cycle or PLC in a variety of ways. For instance, the Project Management Institute have these phases namely conceptualization, planning and development, detailed design, construction and turnover, while another organization labels it as inception, feasibility, design, construction and commissioning. Similarly, the United Architects of the Philippines have a similar viewpoint of projects, that is to say, viewing it in phases and approaching it holistically. For example, it, its phases include pre-design services, design services, specialized and allied services, construction services, and post-construction services, which resemble in part or in whole the standards I discussed earlier. So it is important to note that the common intersection of these models lie in the activities done before, during, and after the physical construction of a project. So let's look at the relational analogy of the PLC or the project life cycle. If we carefully analyze the PMI description of the project life cycle, beginning with the conceptualization phase, which establishes the feasibility of an undertaking and where design objectives are developed, this phase could be optimized by an architect or designer by initial concepts which will enhance the value of the project. So in my experience, if the stakeholder support is solid at this stage with the concepts presented, then maintaining the level of support throughout the life cycle of the project is feasible. For example, during the conceptualization stage, I present to the client the need to utilize air cleaning paint and natural ventilation as a means of reducing CO2 emissions and saving energy throughout the life cycle of the project. So that when the concept was understood, accepted, and approved by the stakeholders, it led to the optimization of our supply chain and easier transactions with stakeholders at the later stages of the project. So the next stages could be represented as milestones with deliverables, but proceeding through each phase requires approval from those involved at the earlier phases. In a general perspective, the concept of the PLC or project life cycle is very important to the construction phase because if it is managed correctly, then the other phases in the PLC will have better formulated points of decision, project deliverables, and milestones of completion that creates a smoother flow and control throughout the duration of the project. So this is an example class of the RIBA small project plan of work. Okay? So this is the cycle that they have. So the first is the strategic definition. The next is the preparation in brief. Then we have the concept and design, the develop design, the technical design, construction, handover and close out, and in use. So I'm going to upload this in our um, group chat so that you could view it as well and relate the different phases. Okay. So for our short activity this week, I want you to write an analysis of the implications of applying a whole life cycle perspective in the management of construction projects. So it should be at least 500 words. So you should also choose one of the following four headline targets in construction 2025, which is a 25 report, which is lower cost, faster delivery, lower emissions, or improvement in export. So write an analysis of the challenges the industry faces in meeting the particular target. So it's also 500 words. Okay, so this is our short lecture for this week. So if you have any further questions or clarifications, you can send an email or contact me through our group chat. So stay safe and see you next week.